Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk About It. I'm Sherry Lopez, human trafficking survivor, prevention educator, founder of Pearl at the Mailbox, founder and president of the Arizona Human Trafficking Survivor Coalition, and founder of the Survivor Informed Learning Institute. Thank you for joining me today. Today's conversation may challenge some long-held beliefs, but I believe it's one we need to have if we're truly serious about protecting children and vulnerable adults. But first, I'd like to begin by asking you a question. As you may notice, I use the term groomer and offender interchangeably, just so I don't confuse you. If I asked you to close your eyes for just a moment and picture a groomer or trafficker, who came to mind? Most people picture a man. They might picture someone older, intimidating, or someone who looks obviously dangerous, maybe scruffy or unkempt, and overall creepy. Now think about this. What if that person you're thinking about was a woman? Did that thought come to your mind? When I talk with people about grooming and prevention, most people tell me they envisioned a man. That's because statistically, groomers and human traffickers are men, but they may have women working for them in various roles. Today and over the next 2 episodes, I want to introduce the fact that women can be just as involved as men. Of course, my goal isn't to make people suspicious of women, not at all. Rather, my goal is to help you understand that grooming is about behavior, not gender. Think about this. If we only watch for one type of person that is capable of grooming or trafficking, we unintentionally give others the opportunity to operate unnoticed. As someone who survived years of grooming and human trafficking, I've learned that offenders don't succeed because they look dangerous. They succeed because they don't. They succeed because they know how to build trust, and trust is one of the most powerful tools an offender can possess. Today we're going to talk about why female groomers are often overlooked, how they use trust to gain access, and why changing our assumptions may help all of us recognize grooming much earlier. When it comes to prevention, we have to overcome our own assumptions. Most of us have spent our entire lives hearing stories where the offender is male, because the majority of them are, but we can't give a free pass to the women who do the same. Even educational materials often reinforce the image that it's only men. In fact, in the recent launch of my Grooming with the Intent to Exploit masterclass, I too refer to the offenders as he or a man. I did this because, again, most groomers and traffickers are men, and when teaching, it is simply easier to refer to one gender. But here's the truth. Women can groom, women can exploit, women can traffic, and women can facilitate abuse committed by someone else. Some act alone, others work alongside male offenders, some recruit victims, some help maintain control, and others create access by making children or vulnerable adults feel safe. Because female offenders don't fit the stereotype many people expect, their behaviors may go unnoticed much longer. Sometimes, concerns are dismissed because people think, she would never do something like that. Sometimes warning signs are explained away because she seems kind, friendly, helpful, or compassionate. Those qualities by themselves are not warning signs, as most caring women are exactly that, caring people. However, offenders understand something very important. People rarely question someone they already trust, and that is why grooming almost always begins with relationship building long before exploitation occurs. It is never enough to view a groomer only by appearance, personality, occupation, or gender. Instead, we must learn to evaluate behavior, because behavior tells us far more than assumptions ever will. To start with, let's look at the power of trust. If I could summarize the grooming process in one word, it would probably be this: trust. Trust is essential in healthy relationships. Children need trusted adults. Families need trusted professionals. And communities depend on trusted leaders. The problem is that offenders understand the incredible power that trust provides. When someone is viewed as trustworthy, people naturally lower their guard. Questions are asked less often, access becomes easier, boundaries may become more flexible, and sadly, offenders know this and use it to their advantage. When you look at social media posts or even the news, it's almost monthly, if not sooner, that you read or hear about an adult in a position of trust having a sexual or inappropriate relationship with a minor. I know I see them so much on social media that my stomach turns and I get so mad that adults in positions of trust prey on our kids. It's got to stop. But where do adults who want to groom minors go? Where the kids are. For the record, I believe 99% of the adults who work with minors or vulnerable adults are really good people with their intentions in the right place. It's the 1% I am talking about, and those are the ones I am trying to educate others about. To shake off the stereotype that it's only men, but offenders put themselves in roles that can provide something extremely valuable: credibility. When someone already appears trustworthy because of the title they have, they often don't have to convince people they're safe. People simply assume they are, and that assumption can delay recognition when concerning behaviors begin to appear. One of the most important lessons I've learned living through the grooming process myself before being trafficked is this: trust comes first, manipulation comes later, and no offender begins by looking dangerous. If they did, I am sure no one would allow them to be near children or vulnerable adults. One point I cannot emphasize enough is that this is often how grooming begins. A person who intends to cause harm rarely starts with behaviors that seem threatening. Instead, they often present themselves as kind, helpful, reliable, generous, good listeners, available when needed, and supportive. Why? Because these are qualities that naturally draw people in. Most of us appreciate someone who listens, offers encouragement, shows kindness, or is willing to help. On their own, these behaviors are not warning signs, nor should they cause a child or teenager to run the other direction. The danger is not the behavior itself. The danger lies in the intent behind it. Groomers use these positive qualities strategically to build trust, lower defenses, create emotional connections, and gradually gain influence. Understanding that distinction is essential. We should never teach children to fear kindness, but we should teach them, and the adults who care for them, to recognize when kindness is being used as part of a pattern to create dependency, weaken boundaries, encourage secrecy, or gain inappropriate control. Let's move on and look at the safe woman assumption. Think back to when you were a child. Many of us were taught something that is generally very good advice. If you get lost, find a woman. I still think this is good advice because, statistically, most women genuinely want to help children, and that advice has undoubtedly helped many children over the years. There is nothing inherently wrong with teaching children to seek safe adults. But prevention also requires us to understand that offenders know this advice exists. They know children often perceive women as safer. They know parents are often more comfortable allowing a child to interact with a woman, and they know communities may be slower to question concerning behaviors when the person involved is female. Of course, this does not mean that all women are unsafe. For myself, I have great women in my life who have become the biggest supporters, friends, and confidants. But I also know what it's like to be trafficked by a woman too. It reminds us that no single characteristic should determine whether someone is trustworthy, because offenders frequently work very hard to appear nurturing, protective, patient, understanding, and compassionate. Sometimes those qualities are genuine, and sometimes they are carefully presented because they create access. Remember, grooming is not about frightening someone, it's about making someone feel safe. In the groomer's mind, the more comfortable a child or vulnerable adult feels, the easier it becomes for an offender to gradually increase influence. That's why prevention requires us to pay attention to patterns of behavior rather than assumptions based on gender. Why do you think victims trust women more quickly? Could it be that children naturally look for women who make them feel emotionally safe? For many children, women remind them of mothers, grandmothers, aunts, or other caregivers they love, and that familiarity can create an immediate sense of comfort. There is nothing wrong with providing kindness or emotional support. Healthy adults do that every day without any expectations, because they care. The difference lies in what happens next. Healthy relationships encourage connection with others. Grooming relationships gradually encourage dependence on one individual. Healthy adults respect boundaries. Groomers slowly weaken them. Healthy adults celebrate independence. Groomers often create emotional dependence. The question to ask is whether kindness is being used to build influence, dependency, and control in a child or vulnerable adult's life. Not only myself as a survivor, but other survivors I have spoken with can look back and recognize that what felt like extraordinary care, support, and even love eventually became extraordinary control, grooming, and for many human trafficking. So we have to look beyond gender and look at behaviors. Because one of the greatest mistakes we can make in prevention is believing that dangerous people always fit a certain description. They don't. Offenders come from different backgrounds, different professions, different ages, different communities, different personalities, and yes, different genders. When we focus too heavily on stereotypes, we stop seeing what is actually happening right in front of us. Instead of asking, "Would a woman do that?" ask a different question. Is this behavior appropriate? Is someone creating unnecessary emotional dependence with a child, teen, or vulnerable adult? Stop and ask yourself, are healthy boundaries slowly disappearing? Is there increasing secrecy? Is someone becoming unusually possessive of a child or vulnerable adult? Are gifts, favors, or special privileges creating an exclusive relationship? Are concerns consistently dismissed because the person is too nice to question? Those are the questions that matter because grooming leaves behavioral footprints long before exploitation occurs. And if we learn to recognize those behaviors, we become far more effective at protecting others. As we finish today's episode, I'd like to leave you with one simple thought. Prevention is strongest when we replace assumptions with awareness. Most women are loving, compassionate, and deeply committed to protecting others. Nothing we've discussed today should cause us to fear women or question every caring adult. Instead, it should remind us that anyone, regardless of gender, can misuse trust. That's why our focus should never be on stereotypes. Our focus should always be on behavior. Behavior tells the story. Behavior reveals patterns. Behavior gives us the opportunity to intervene before exploitation occurs. That's what protects children and teens. That's what protects vulnerable adults. And that's how we recognize grooming before exploitation occurs. The next episode, I will continue to share the roles women have in grooming and human trafficking, and how the woman who plays the role of the rescuer can actually become the trafficker. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Let's Talk About It. If today's episode helped you see grooming from a different perspective, I encourage you to share it with someone else. The more people who understand how grooming really works, the more opportunities we have to prevent exploitation before it begins. Also, visit www.pearlatthemailbox.org, check out all of my books on Amazon, and take a look at the newly launched Survivor-Informed Learning Institute, where you can take my 5-hour signature course titled Recognizing Grooming Before Exploitation Masterclass. www.survivorledlearning.com. Until next time, stay aware, keep learning, and remember, prevention starts long before exploitation, and a groomer can be any gender.